Well, once I was notified and was dispatched to go off base for a possible aircraft downing, I assembled a team and went approximately about 300 yards off base where we had our encounter with a craft of unknown origin.
What did you see, James?
Well, as we approached the tree line, it was a very bright light emanating from the woods. But as we got a little bit closer, the light started to dissipate, and we could see a silhouette of a craft, the shape of the craft forming. And as we get up maybe within 10, 15 feet of it, the bright light had dissipated altogether, and there was just lighting of blue and red running through the fabric of the craft.
Could you see shape at this point?
Oh, it was defined shape. It was triangular in shape. It measured approximately 6.5 feet high by 9 feet on the ground. It was in most of the area of the craft itself was probably about 60 or 70% opaque, black-like fabric of the craft was black-like, more like a glass finish.
I'm not going to ask you about origin yet, James, but you have no doubt that this was a physical structure, right?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. The craft was situated on the forest floor, and it was solid, and it was unmovable.
It left imprints in the ground, which they have the plaster casts of.
That's right, James. The ground temperature at that time, because the next morning was measured or was taken, and it was like 31 degrees, and the depressions were anywhere from about 1.5 to 2 inches in the ground. So it was quite heavy, but light for aircraft standards. It was probably, later on a team had estimated what the weight was based on the ground temperature, and they estimated about 7 tons. And, that's very light for an aircraft, even a fighter aircraft, 25, 30 tons.
How long did you stay out there, James, witnessing the craft?
I was doing a 360 around the craft, doing my investigation, trying to determine if the craft was hostile.
How close did you get?
I was right at the craft. I mean, I was...
oh, my God.
I was right next to it, and, I was actually physically touching it.
Yeah, touching it, yeah.
It was... Yes, Jim, go ahead.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just want to emphasize that Jim Pennison wasn't alone. He was actually with John Burroughs and Ed Cabansag. Ed Cabansag wasn't at the actual craft, but he walked out towards the craft with them and then stayed back as he was he was a relay for the radio transmission.
He was the radio relay. Yeah, the actual two people around the craft was myself and Airman Burroughs. Yeah. But, we also had our whole security contingent, less than 300 yards away, which is another 16 security policemen there.
Yeah, Burroughs was in D.C. with us this weekend with Linda Moulton Howe, and they gave great testimony, as you do, James. So when you touched the craft, what did it feel like? Was it hot? Was it cold?
The craft was somewhat warm. But you got to remember the temperature outside was 32, 33 degrees, and it felt warm to the touch. The air around the craft was giving an electrical charge off. If we could feel that on our clothes, our skin, our hair. Of course, some of that might have been a little adrenaline going on there, but it was consistent. And even after I settled down. And I determined there was no threat that I could see from this craft. It was sitting there inert. I conducted, a further investigation of it by walking around it, taking my notes. I had taken pictures going up to it. And then it was on the ground approximately 45 minutes. And then it started to generating light throughout the fabric of the craft, and it started to get brighter. And John and I, Aaron Burroughs, We took a defensive position, probably about 25 feet from the craft, and watched it rise up to tree level, hover momentarily, and then take off in a blink of an eye.
Without any sound, wake, air disturbance?
There was no sound. There was no air displacement. Let me describe something a little bit better with the craft describing it.
All right, James.
Some of the things I was looking for on the craft, obviously, were crew compartments, intakes, exhausts, things of that nature, and it was void of all those. It was a solid surface on it, and it for the 9 feet long by 6.5 feet high. It was a very small craft, and so I was looking for the crew compartments. I said, well, this has to be a one-seater or something like that. Mm-hmm. But there was just no windows at all. And that's the other odd thing on takeoff. Besides not having the air displacement that you get from engines and noise, I could not determine what the power source was for that.
So you couldn't see any engines or a hole in the middle of it or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely not. It was completely foreign. I have never seen anything like that.
What's amazing? Oh, sorry.
Any insignias on it at all, James, or any markings that? Right
on the one of the things I recorded on the far side of the craft, I was looking at it. There were symbols, pictorial type symbols that were etched into the fabric of the craft, and they measured probably a few inches high, and they stretched out for about I would say probably 2 feet. And these are completely foreign, too. I've never seen anything like them. One of the interesting things about those symbols in the film that James did, I Know What I Saw, is he had taken those to a professor in England, and they had examined them and come up with possibilities of what they were. And their answer was it was some type of mathematical cipher of some kind.
It was mathematics. I remember the mathematician saying to me when I gave him these symbols that a light bulb went on in his head. It was almost like he kind of thought he might have decoded it. And one of the things they've always said in the past, Jim, is that the only universal language, of course, I'm not a mathematician myself, but I've been told the only universal language is mathematics. So that's the one way that we could communicate with an extraterrestrial race. And when he looked at these symbols, some of them obviously didn't make any sense, but some of them did. And he thinks, what's that sequence? But it's found everywhere in nature. And
Pi?
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci. The Fibonacci sequence. He saw that in one of the symbols.
Let me ask you this, James. If there was one occupant in there, let's say, let me rephrase it. If there was an occupant in there the size of a human being, how many do you think could fit in there? Just the one?
One small human being, yes.
All right.
Here's the other thing that could not happen. It couldn't have been manned. Not with a human being. Now, I know this because when the craft accelerated from 0 miles per hour, and whatever the speed would be in a blink of an eye, be out of sight, which I would imagine be thousands of miles per hour. Nobody would be able to withstand the G-force involved with an acceleration like that.
Well, let me ask you, was it an acceleration, or did it disappear as if it went into another dimension or through a portal?
Well, from my point of observation, it was just blink and was gone.
Gone.
But I'm going to other eyewitnesses that are around Bentwaters and in the weapons storage areas and stuff like that. They actually seen it go ahead and head north, as a streak.
Okay.
So I'm just going by what the other witnesses have said to me on that.
Okay. But what if there were ET occupants in this craft, but they weren't the size of human beings? They were 6 or 7 inches tall. Let's say. Let's just say that. How many could be in there then? Many.
Well, if they were 3 or 4 feet tall, George, they'd probably be able to handle 3, maybe 4.
Look how many people they got in the Gemini mission. Those capsules were tiny.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They got them at the Smithsonian. You look in there, it's like a tin can.
They squeezed the 2 in there, didn't they, side by side?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it would have been very tight quarters, I'm sure. But if I'm thinking, a 6-foot person, it would have been very, very, very tight for one person there.
did we have drones in 1980, James Fox?
Gosh, James Pennison would be more.
No, we didn't have any drones.
No drones then. Okay.
No.
Did you think at any point, James, that this was man-made? The United States has it, or Britain has it, but it's man-made. Did you think that at all while you were looking at it?
That was the last thing that came to mind. It was
the last thing.
The last thing. It was not man-made. It wasn't in the James Book of Known Aircraft. And I'll tell you what, as a security policeman over there, we were routinely, 2 or 3 times a month in our security police training, showing silhouettes of all NATO aircraft, all U.S. aircraft, all Warsaw Pact aircraft. It wasn't a standard aircraft.
Can I mention something really quickly? Because this is the propulsion is what gets me, James. There was an article in Life magazine, I believe it was published in 1952, and it was an investigation from Life, and I know the Air Force cooperated with Life magazine on this. And one of the conclusions, which I feature, and I know what I saw, but they say no known propulsion could account for the performances of these devices. And that was the conclusion in 1952. And it applies exactly to what Jim Pennison's talking about. There is just no known propulsion behind this craft. I mean,
they're using anti-gravity, and they've got to be using it with some form of magnetics.
Yeah, with no sound and no wake, no air disturbance, no sonic boom. How can you accelerate something from a standstill to out of sight? I talked to witnesses that saw this massive craft a mile across flying over Phoenix in 1997, March 1997. And a whole family saw it just take off, and in the blink of an eye. Exactly how James Pennison describes this craft taking off is this craft that was a mile across. They said, literally, had I blinked, I would have missed it. It shot off. With no sound, no air disturbance.
There could have been a mothership, too, and this may have been, going back up to it.
What is this?
George, technology, it cannot be replicated today. I mean, it's just the maneuvering and the with no there was complete silence. It was silent running craft. I mean, we have nothing that's silent running. And I doubt if we'll have anything in the next 50 years that's silent running.